has it been for the folks on the Teams chat? So thank you so much for joining the Teams chat as well. We have a great panel for you today, talking about how you can do much more with Azure PaaS and Azure App Service. If you can see them on the screen there, we've got pretty much the entire Azure App Service product team here to answer all the questions you had but didn't know whom to ask. My name's Mayunk Jain. I'm a product marketing manager for App Service, and I'll be moderating this session today. Let me just quickly run through some of the housekeeping on how you can engage with us today. So feel free to use the chat to ask your questions, and we will be monitoring the chat to kind of go over them one by one as we can. Please, remember that this session is recorded. It is being live streamed, so we will. It's a hybrid session, so we will have a few people here in the Seattle Convention Center. We have a lot of people out there joining remotely, so we will have all of us. And just do not spam or post. I'm sure you know that. You'll see this slide many, many times about the code of conduct, and I'm sure everyone's going to be following that. With that, let me quickly introduce our amazing team. I'm just going to go around the table, one by one, and let the folks introduce themselves. So Stefan, right here next to me. So Stefan, why don't you introduce yourself and share with us why you're excited about Build this year? What are you bringing to Build?
What am I bringing to Build? Okay, so hey, hello folks, both here as well as on the chat with us. So yeah, real quick, I'm Stefan Schackow. You've probably seen me over the years. I'm the product manager lead for Azure App Service. Definitely for folks attending both virtually as well as physically who trekked out here, thank you for attending. It's also just pretty cool to finally see like the new digs, see everyone actually here. And I have to admit, probably my most excitement is just like, hey, wow, we're actually getting back into the swing of things with the conference circuit. So that's really the most exciting thing from my point of view. In terms of what's new for App Service, I know we've got a slide on it that goes over a couple of different points. I think I'll leave it for that, and also for a number of the other product experts who can touch on the areas.
That's actually a good idea. Let me switch over to just sharing what we have for you at MS Build as we go around doing the introduction, so that way you can map yourselves to like the topics and start thinking of the questions you want to ask us. So let's maybe just go around the room. Tulika, or Gaurav, yeah, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Gaurav. I'm a product manager on the App Services team, and what's exciting in Build for me is the feature that I pretty much manage, automatic scaling for App Service plans, and also there are a bunch of sessions around migration tooling. So yeah, that's exciting in Build.
And you should probably plug your session later this week.
Yes, so actually I have a demo for automatic scaling today afternoon, and then Thursday morning we have the breakout session for migrating and modernizing your ASP.NET and Java web apps to App Service.
Hi everyone, my name is Jung Choi. I'm a product manager on Azure, focusing on App Service Diagnostics, which is one of the diagnostics that we have available within the self-serve diagnostics portfolio. So I'm excited about giving a demo on the newest enhancements that we're introducing to App Service Diagnostics, which is the AI-powered recommendations for troubleshooting. It's going to be available in the Diagnose and Solve Problems blade for App Services. And then also I'm a subject matter expert today for the Diagnose and Solve Problems blade, the menu option that you would see just in general. So yeah, I'm just really excited to talk to you all and yeah, connect.
Hi everyone, my name is Yutang. I am also product manager on App Service. I pretty much work on the areas such as domain certificates and monitoring aspect as well. And one of the things that I'm very excited about today at Build is the configure minimum TLS cipher switch. It used to be a feature that is only available on ACES, but now it's actually available for premium multi-tenant. It'll eventually go down to other SKUs as well once you go to GA. I already have a tech community post about it. If you want to search it up, just look for minimum TLS cipher suite app service, and I'll have more information about what's coming up next when we go GA, and especially also more information about TLS 1.3, which I know some of you are also excited about.
Hi, I'm Tulika. I am a product manager with App Services, focusing more on Linux. And I'm very excited about two features that I want to talk about. One is that we have a new WordPress hosting plan. So we have taken some of the feedback into consideration. We now have a MySQL, which uses autoscale IOPS. So you can get a benefit of lesser price, 25 to 35%. And I think that's very exciting. The second thing is one of the most asked for features, multi-site support. So you could have a main site and subsites within it, which was a WordPress feature, but we now have it on WordPress on App Services, and that's great. I don't have a session today, but please catch me if you have any questions about it.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, team. And we actually have an exciting blog that Stefan has posted this morning. So I'm just going to paste a link to that, so where you can learn more about some of these things. But before we continue, I'd just like to pause and see if there are any questions in the room. Anyone has anything top of mind that they'd like to ask us? Feel free to ask, or maybe raise your hand, and I can repeat the question so that the folks on the internet can hear us as well. Awesome. So I think just to repeat the question for folks on the virtual teams. So I think the question is around where can we have visibility into some of the maximum app limit in App Service, and maybe Stefan, is that something you want to take, or is it one of our expert panel there?
Oh yeah, for sure. But can you help repeat the question? Just so that I'm.
So I think it's around the
right
fact that there are some app rate limits on App Service, but you're not able to see it currently, I think, in the UI, right? So how do we have a solution right now, or is there something else that you recommend?
Yeah, I think one thing that you might want to explore in the Diagnose and Solve Problems blade, which is also referred to as App Service Diagnostic, is if you go to the availability and performance troubleshooting categories, there are various different topics that you can check out, of which I think for your specific scenario, you might want to check out the high CPU analysis, which would give you sort of the breakdown of like how your app is impacting the overall CPU usage. And then there's also another area you can check out like more related to high memory. So you can also check those out. And then I believe if you go to the risk alerts section, which is also like one of the troubleshooting categories that you'll find, you'll also be able to just run some checks on how your app is configured against the best practices and like optimal configurations. And in those, you'd also be able to find like what's the best way forward in terms of making sure you have the correct configuration set up for your workloads. So I'm actually unfamiliar with, when you go to the pricing tier, how that particular recommendations is bubbled up. So Stefan, you want to?
Yeah, so for the specific question of, you are right, there are various docs, and also I believe even in the Diagnose and Solve detector, it may give those numbers as well. Those are just, first off, they're soft limits. They're not anything that App Service is going to hard throttle your plan on. They are based upon all the swath of historical support cases that we've had, frankly, in large part just with the older SKUs, like the old S1s that had only 2 gig or maybe 4 gig of RAM available. And so they were just meant to be like, here's a reasonable limit that is a good starting point, that there's probably a non-trivial probability that if someone is running more than that number of apps on a single plan, that they may be running out of memory. But that's all it is. You do definitely need to, again, either run the CPU and memory detectors, which will definitively tell you what's going on. And then the other thing, of course, is once you get a feel for it, you can also set up monitoring and alerting on the memory metric of the app service plan to tell you that something, from your perspective, might be running too close to the limit of the plan. One other quick note, and it's something, again, to this day, a lot of folks don't realize it. If you're scaled out to 2 or more instances on a plan, thinking like, hey, give me a second instance or a third instance, it's going to get me more CPU and more memory. The thing is, all the apps on your plan are going to show up on that second instance, and the third instance, and the fourth, and the nth instance. And probably if you're running a bunch of apps in a single plan, that's probably not right, the developer's intent. They probably meant to try to pack as many apps as they could fit on one instance. And then when they sort of get to the breaking point, say, what you want to do is create a completely new second app service plan and start filling that up with apps, then create a third app service plan with a single instance, start filling that up with apps. Think of it like having a bunch of glasses and you're sort of filling the first one up with a drink and then the second one and then the third one. What you don't want to do is like sit there and take the exact same, jug of water and like pour it across all of them, which is, again, folks don't necessarily realize that. Okay, cool.
One thing I just want to add there is, as Stefan just mentioned, if you want to see if you are reaching that breaking point, like the best resources I think we have out there for free is the diagnose and solve problems, the high CPU analysis and high memory detector.
And I think just to add on to what Stefan said, again, the feature that I was talking about, automatic scaling, can also help you there, because with automatic scaling, one, you could define the whole, like how much can your plan scale, but you can also define how much can your individual app scale within that plan. Again, I'm not talking about per app scaling. I don't want to confuse you with that. But again, there are ways that if you have more than one app within the same plan, you can actually control the min and the max for that app. So even that might help you.
So if I understand a little bit more about the deep dive on it, you potentially have a bunch of apps that you just want to throw onto a bunch of compute, excuse me, and in essence, have us, the platform, ensure the fact that we just sort of spread it out correctly. And excuse me, and that's the thing where I apologize, but I wish the platform did that for you currently. It doesn't quite do it. If you do look in our docs, you'll see there is a doc article that says per site scaling, something like that. That's never really panned out to the extent we wanted it to. It's something I'm hoping we can still solve in an auto-magical manner. But that's why today the way to address it is if you're looking at the way we're scaling, you're like, this isn't working, your instincts are probably spot on. And the solution, such as it is like I said, one instance per plan. You're going to have to do a certain amount of tuning to figure out like how much do I want to pack onto that one instance, and that's the part where admittedly it's more your hands are on it, and then just rinse and repeat with a second single instance plan, a third single instance one. Now, having it said that, we keep on making some forward progress on trying to solve this problem. It keeps on coming up again and again. Gaurav, who's been working on automatic scaling here for probably the last 2 years, we've talked a lot in the background saying like, could we do another iteration on it and not only do the, hey, we'll scale you out based upon your load, but have a different way of doing it that says, you tell us the SKU, just because that's ultimately what you're paying for, and then we take care of like automatically packing you onto the different instances. And again, doing logical things like you're talking about. If I need a second instance of an app, I don't want to put them both on the same machine because they're going to be duking it out for the resources. But currently, there's not a completely automatic way to pull that off.
I do want to remind folks on the Teams chat that that's another option for you to ask your questions. So don't be shy. Keep throwing in the questions there, and I see a few of them coming in. Let me get one from the chat, and then we'll maybe come back to the room. So here's a question on Stefan, you want to just.
Look, we'll start with the first one, and we'll see who here knows the answer. And there may be cases where I don't know the answer, but yep, that's the whole idea of this kind of a session. So, okay, first question from Will from the chat. Will we ever be able to VNet integrate public tenancy consumption plan app services? We are working on it in all seriousness, not quite yet. Best I can say is stay tuned, and by all means come to maybe Ignite or something along the way in between. But we know what you're asking for. We are working on it. We'll get there. When will we be able to purchase reservations for non-premium tier SKUs? Great question. I know you're probably not going to be terribly happy with the answer, but probably never. Now, in all seriousness, here's why. We have the full lineup of both savings plans, reserved instances, and then also, if I recall correctly, on Visual Studio dev test pricing. It's just you've got the swath of every single possible discount option that Azure has is out there on Premium V3. And the reason why, frankly, we do that is for a host of reasons. We want folks, at least for net new deployments, and you heard it here from us, try to get on Premium v3 if it makes sense. Like, it's without a doubt our preferred option. It's why you see, like in the blog, and you've seen it on the Azure Service Update, that we've rolled out so many updates, and it's all PV3, PV3, PV3. So like, at least for net new, again, I understand many of you have been around us for years, but at least for net new, you want to be on PV3, both architecturally underneath the hood, you're getting on a better part of our footprint. And then again, discounting wise, that's why the discounts are there. We want to sort of pull people up onto PV3. Maybe a sort of a corollary to that question is like, hey, I'm on an older PV2 or heck, a standard tier. Will I ever be able to get off of it? Slowly but surely we'll get there. Don't call me Shirley, haha. But in all seriousness, we are trying to get the older parts of the footprint upgraded over time. It's not going to land here like tomorrow or next month, but again, we're acutely aware of it. And we will get you there. There will come a day where literally if you were on us 10 years ago, there will be a way for you to eventually update and upgrade to PV3. But if you want to get moving right now, that's the thing where it's like, you want to do a net new deployment, land on PV3, you get the discounting options, and you're sort of good to go. So again, that's just sort of the state of the union of where we're at. Will West US be getting multi-AZs this year? As in, will West US be getting multiple availability zones? You know, great question. I admit I don't know. That's something more generally like us, like dozens of other services. We do ultimately build on the on the underlying substrate. That is Azure, and I don't actually know where we're at on West US, but I'd say stay tuned because ultimately it's not just us, it's the entirety of Azure would go through that update process.
I'm just going to pause and see if let's round robin between the virtual questions and the in-room questions. This is a new format, hybrid, so we'll make the best of it to make sure everybody's included. So any questions in the room before we go back to I see a couple of questions in the chat. I did want to give you guys an opportunity at that side of the room as well. Okay, that's a good question, Gaurav. So the question, if you could repeat the question and then answer it.
So I guess the question is that does the automatic scaling scale out and scale in? The answer is yes. So just to keep it simple, we are calling it more like cruise mode scaling. So you just like give us a bunch of configurations, and beyond that, the platform will take care of like scaling out and scaling in. So that's the simplicity we are trying to bring with this feature. So there is no way to customize like anything beyond the number of instances that you want, like in terms of timing and stuff. You cannot customize that interval. But what we've done is we basically have this like intelligent algo behind the scene where we are looking at your incoming HTTP traffic. And the moment we see that your traffic is like exceeding how much the instance can support, we like give you more instances. And to make things more easy, what we do is behind the scene, we will always have at least one buffer instance available. So we are not waiting for one instance to warm up. We already have a buffer available, and you keep adding it till the time we hit the max limit that you have set on your plan.
How do you know where you possibly could have a problem?
Maybe like checking the velocity of how crazy.
So we are basically behind the scene, we are looking at the CPU utilization, the memory utilization, and based on that, we take the call. So basically, once the traffic starts hitting the instance, we'll see the CPU going up, we'll see the memory utilization going up, and that is where we decide to add an instance. Actually, I have a demo for this exact feature at 2:45 today, just the room across, and I can show you.
Also, just to add a little more color to that, which was basically a number of questions about how the automatic scaling works, how quickly it triggers, things like that. A couple of things, again, Gaurav and I have chatted about this offline. Certainly great questions. We'll add more to the docs over time to explain a little bit more what's going on. Also, realize underneath the hood, technology-wise, it's actually an adaptation of the serverless scaling that backs Elastic Premium for functions. So it is a bit more than just, it's not just a pure reskinning and rebranding of it, because the engineers had to do a fair amount of tweaking to get it tuned for the app service web app style workload versus like a super lightweight serverless workload. But it's very much so like its lineage is the Elastic Premium function scaler. So again, if you're curious about it in the super near term, if you browse how like the EP function scaler works, a lot of it'll click. You'd be like, oh, that's why it's doing what it's doing, because again, we're sort of following the same thing. And again, to the questions about like how quickly do we scale, things like that, it's meant to be an alternative to the Azure Autoscaler. So it's definitely not meant to be like a, hey, we wait a minute and then resample. It's to what Gaurav was saying. The work that the functions folks did before us and that we're leveraging is able to very quickly, every couple of seconds, say, what's the relative load on this app? Does it look like we need to start scaling ahead of demand, which was the buffer instance concept? So again, that's all sort of kicking away underneath the hood there in the automatic scaling feature.
Awesome. So following our pattern, let's head back into the virtual Teams chat and take a question from there. So Stefan, do you want to take this, or it's about load balancing?
Okay, so yeah, I'm just looking here at the chat, and again, I'm just sort of going from linearly for the top. So Kellen mentions we make heavy use of app services for internal apps. Yup, line of business, so they're internal facing. We need to increase the availability by running in 2 regions. So they're looking at an active passive failover configuration. It seems like the load balancing options that are out there, Traffic Manager and Front Door, are geared for public facing applications. What's the best solution that you want to run when you're in an isolated service plan? So the thing that immediately comes to mind is if you use the Azure Networking App Gateway product that's out there, it does know how to integrate into a virtual network. And as a result, it can also route further onwards to an app that's running, for example, in an isolated app service plan that would be running on an ACE. So that's the immediate thing that comes to mind. I admit myself, I'm a little far removed on what the longer term plans are for Front Door. I don't think Traffic Manager is going to iterate over time to try to handle that internal facing scenario. I apologize, I admit I don't know if AFD, what's on the plans there to solve like the private endpoint / VNet integrated scenario. But certainly for now, App Gateway is like that's the thing I hear over and over again from folks who use that as one of the options for internal load balancing.
Thank you, Stefan. So coming back to the room now, and let us please share your feedback on how this format works for you. But any other questions in the room?
Okay, so the general question is, if you're running, regardless Windows or Linux, is there a way to sort of see the overhead of the underlying platform, then also are the limits documented? So currently, like, there's no crisp document you're going to find out there that says, hey, for app service, regardless Windows or Linux flavor, source code or container-based, what are the relative overheads? With that said, not at all an uncommon question. If I remember correctly from a discussion off the top of my head with some of the Linux engineers, I think in Linux land, we said it was somewhere in the like 1 to 1.25 gigabyte range was sort of a safe, steady state estimate. Because realize underneath the hood, unlike Windows, on Linux App Service, everything, regardless of how you deploy, does actually get mounted and run in a container. So that's just meant to be like the overall platform overhead. We haven't really had concerns about like the per app overhead of running in a container or not, because again, realize for us on Linux, I mean, the containers are pretty thin. They're just like, core OS, what's the specific language, and then we mount in the file volume that has your app on it. Another thing is, again, to Yung Jain's team, right, Diagnose and Solve will give you a bit more of a view, and that's actually frequently where we get the questions from, because they'll sort of look at what's in the Azure Monitor metrics, and then they'll compare it to what they see in Diagnose and Solve and be like, you can see a little bit more of what's going on. That's the state of the union today. We have been pretty upfront internally that, we need to get crisper, because this is, again, not an uncommon question, and it is something I think in the not super near term, but not long term, it'll become clear to say, hey, here's, a way of looking like, here's my sort of rough overhead of the platform. Here's actually your app on top of it. But like I said, if you keep like 1.25 gig in mind as sort of platform footprint, if you're going to be running on Linux as sort of a safe limit to just sort of leave alone, that seems to be a reasonable rule of thumb.
Thank you, Stefan. And as we are heading towards the end of the session, actually, I thought I will ask a question to the audience here, and even maybe to the audience on the chat. which is around the security value of app service. Like how many, maybe a quick show of hands, like how many of you are using some of the security capabilities in app service? And do you see that as something that's a high priority for you? If maybe a quick show of hands. Right. Yeah. So anything, right? So yeah, it's the TLS, it's the encryption, it's the isolated service plans which we have, the integration with our security like Microsoft Defender for Cloud. We've got Azure policy integrations. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've been releasing over the last few months that I just wanted to make sure there's awareness and there's usage. And it would be great, like after the session's over, if you even want to come and talk to us about your use cases, just to better understand how are you using it? Because we do hear from a lot of customers that the number one reason they use it, apart from the convenience and the flexibility, is security. At many of the EBCs, that has come up as one of the big things, and that's why we keep adding features. So just wanted to kind of hear a little bit more about that, and then we have our experts here like Yutang who can talk a little bit more, even if you want to catch us outside after the session.
I was going to say, let me expand on Mayunk's question a little bit more concretely. How many folks would be interested if we had like super seamless integration with, specifically in Defender, the antivirus part of Defender? Okay, I see a couple. Okay. How many of you have actually tried the current in preview, admittedly, Defender sort of, I don't even know if it's Defender, the AV integration, antivirus integration that's out there on App Service? Okay, so I was going to say, shameless plug, Yutang is our product manager for it. We have been, over the years, thinking about like, okay, should we or shouldn't we move it forward to GA? Just because, right, full disclosure, none of us within the service universe are antivirus experts. And again, as you well know, you start going down that rabbit hole, you do need folks who know what they're doing and services and et cetera. But people do ask and say like, hey, how do I go out and like, AV scan what's going on with my code? Typically, we say do it upstream, right? Like if you're releasing out of ADO or GitHub, go security scan it before you release. But the preview level support we have out there is basically like a periodic file scan. I don't remember which technology it is on Windows and Linux.
Microsoft Defender.
Okay, so it's Defender, and then is Linux also Defender, or is it I thought it was some other software? But anyway, yeah. Long and the short of it is we do have that available in preview. Again, I don't have anything specific to say, hey, we're going to announce it goes to GA soon, but it's one of those things where we're like always wondering, okay, could we bring it to GA? Would folks use it? Frankly, our biggest worry more than anything else is it is a bit intensive on disk I/O, unsurprisingly. But okay, good to know. Good to know.
Awesome. So I think with that, we are kind of at the end of the 30 minutes dedicated for this session, to my knowledge. So is this longer?
I thought this went until 12:15.
Oh, it goes longer? Okay, that's good.
Good.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So okay.
So we can. I think it was your turn on the internet.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Go ahead.
So okay. So all good. Don't worry, we're still here. Okay. So a couple of questions here. Yeah, and again, these are reasonable. So when does App Service become cheaper than VMs? And there's a comparison here saying, hey, I had a certain price per month on VMs, and yet they found it was substantially more expensive on App Service. So yeah, I mean, let's tackle that. And then there's a follow-on question. It's sort of another shade of it. Look, completely admittedly, and again, we get this question all the time, even from our field folks, right? If you do a dollar for dollar comparison, you will always find VMs are going to have a lower list price than App Service. No doubt about it. We believe that part of the value of the service is that once you're up and running on us, you don't have to go back and worry about the incessant care and feeding of the VMs, of the operating systems, in many cases of the frameworks. And that although that's not exactly a feature that we can put up in giant neon lights, over the long term, that's the kind of thing that ensures the fact that you have a consistently updated security posture on your service, where you didn't accidentally end up boomeranging back 6 or 9 months out of date relative to patches, whether it's language patches or OS patches, and then suddenly that bites you at an unexpected time. But also along those lines, right, remember, again, probably here I'm preaching to the metaphorical choir, right? If you deploy something on a VM and now you want a second instance, it's like, okay, well, you need to do something to go set up another VM and go reinstall your software. And so there is operational overhead in that. And so part of the idea here is, again, you clearly have seen it over the years with Azure pipelines, with GitHub Actions, right? There's a very heavy push to say, hey, even if you came directly from VMs, can you iterate and move onto more of a, DevOps, CI/CD, again, all sort of meat and potatoes for a lot of us here. Whereas admittedly with VMs, especially as you sort of go up the business decision maker chain, there's a tendency to just sort of sit back and be like, okay, great, we made it to the VM. It's like, yeah, but you didn't. That's it. I mean, you went to a VM and now you're sort of stuck there. You're not getting anything else pushing you along. So that's part of the idea there. With that said, right, I do see a follow-on question they're asking about, are there any plans to bring, I think, what is it, Azure Hybrid Benefit? And so that's for Windows. For those of you who are wondering what that acronym is for, it's not applicable to Linux. There is actually some work there. If I recall correctly, the deal is you have to, like, metaphorically call up your Microsoft sales rep. But in all seriousness, if you do have a Microsoft sales rep through whatever avenue, you can actually ask them point blank and say, hey, there was this person at the Build conference, and he said it absolutely exists, and I know it exists. Mayunk knows it exists. It's not Azure Hybrid Benefit like exactly, but you can actually get discounting for workloads that are coming on the Windows App Service. It's actually been there, but nobody knew about it. We've sort of, I believe, re-energized that with our field and sellers. And so if you do have that as an avenue, please, please, please bring it up. You can use my name in vain and say, that dude went out and said that. It is actually there, and it is meant to help ease the move over onto Windows App Service. And then lastly, because of course, right, I'm biased because I love my service, there are no shortage of folks who will come on board to Windows on classic.NET. At the same time, they're getting more into using .NET Core for their new development, and then they will span very seamlessly over to the Linux side of App Service because it works the same, it looks the same, there's not huge disjoint differences. No, by the way, the cost curve immediately goes down on that. So that's another thing to think about. I know it's not something you can get instantly right now, but if you think about what's your plan long-term to move over to .NET Core, beyond the architectural benefits of being on the newer framework, right, that also means now you can span over to Linux and people very naturally make that transition.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stefan. I'm also going to use this opportunity to kind of do some shameless plugs for some of the things that we've been working on, right? So I don't know if you guys caught Scott Hanselman's Azure Friday, last Friday, where Tulika had a segment on WordPress. I just wanted to kind of ask Tulika if you could just give us a quick overview of what you were talking about, and what would you like to kind of set the stage for them to go and check it out later.
So last year we GA'd WordPress on App Service. We had an offering earlier of WordPress, but that was still in preview, and we did know that there were some performance problems with it. But the GA offering is that we have worked really hard on making sure that you could set up a WordPress site as seamlessly as possible with as few clicks as possible and get really good performance. So what it does under the hoods is make sure that you have Redis enabled, make sure that you have CDN enabled. You don't have to worry about it. All you need to do is bring your content and we will set everything up in the background in the most optimal way for you. So if you haven't checked that, please go to the Azure Marketplace, search for WordPress on App Service, and check out the feature. And if you have any feedback about it, if you want to know more about it, you can catch me around for the next 2 days.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tulika. I think it's an exciting thing. We've been hearing a lot of good things. WordPress is the dominant workload out there for that service, so it's really been helping a lot of customers. So if you haven't checked it out, I do recommend seeing it and sharing your feedback. This is more than just the session delivery. I think the reason we love these conferences is the feedback we get back, and now we are here with you, and we're here with the folks on the chat. So please keep sharing feedback. Now you know these folks, so you know who to go to. We have a lot more of these discussion sessions through this week. So if you have more questions, we have one dedicated to the whole cost angle. I think tomorrow with Naga and myself and Guy. So feel free to come to that if you have more questions around the cost aspect of app service. I think we have time for more questions. So go ahead.
Okay. So the question in the room is they've had difficulty with snap ports and just asking for a general discussion. Yeah, I'll jokingly say we'll now adjourn outside for a Punch and Judy's show and a lot of alcohol, and we'll act out what happens with SNAT ports involving Nerf bats. Okay, so SNAT, Software Network Address Translation, there is, in all seriousness, if you Bing Google it, there's a good article, admittedly a bit obtuse, but from Azure Networking that tries to explain from an Azure perspective what's involved. There's also a similar article for App Service. To say, Yunjin, did you want to touch on the magic that's in Diagnose and Solve? That's probably the most approachable way of using it.
I'll go after you cover everything.
Okay. Anyway, long and the short of it is, much like any of us when we're at home, you're behind a cable modem or DSL, right, and you have to do some kind of network address translation. When you're running on the app service footprint and you make outbound calls to a public IP address, the networking challenge is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of VMs running in just a single one of our scale units. We have like thousands of these scale units around the world. And so the net result is there has to be a way to be able to map the outbound calls that someone's making to an API endpoint and be able to do that in real time. So ultimately, the traffic that's egressing from a worker VM, it's going out to the internet, is going through Azure Network's intermediate network address translation layer, aka SNAT. And without going into horrible details, there's sort of a finite limit on how much of that we can translate instantaneously. And then there is a very indefinable rate at which that limit can be dynamically adjusted upwards and downwards, because underneath the hood, all this stuff ultimately is software running somewhere, in this case, in the networking layer, that's trying to literally scale out and in the allocation of these translations. Net result is you may run into problems where you have intermittent connectivities, issues that manifest itself as like connection resets or connections not opening when you're trying to reach an endpoint. I will segue over to Yunjin to say, how do we diagnose that?
Yeah, so again, if you go to the Diagnose and Solve Problems blade and use the search to basically search up snap ports exhaustion, you'll actually see very rich diagnostics that's been authored by some of the domain experts in the space. I mean, these are experts like who, people in PG would actually go to these people to ask about, SNAT issues. So you'd actually be able to see, we run some checks on the backend telemetry automatically for you, and then basically tell you if you're experiencing snap port exhaustion issues, you'd be able to see an insight and sort of next steps on what to do to fix that particular issue you're running into, and then also with TCP connectivity issues and such. So yeah, definitely check that out.
And then to tie it all up, definitely the work Yunjin's team has done, that is without a doubt our best deflection, self-serve troubleshooting that's out there. It's not quite AI, but it's basically the collective wisdom of a lot of folks who've been in it. The doc on App Service, and I think if you just search Learn Docs App Service SNAT, because luckily SNAT is such a weird term, it'll actually get you a good search result. Towards the end of that article has a lot of good recommendations on how to try to avoid it. The TLDR is use connection pooling for your favorite language, framework, and endpoint for obvious reasons. And then lastly, it's a little bit, sort of obtuse, but these days, if you can connect over a virtual network to the endpoint you're interested in, that will completely get you around the snap port limits. So if you're on public multi-tenant app service, aka not an ACE, you go connect your app to a virtual network, and let's say you connect to SQLDB and you configure it with private endpoints. That connection route will go from the point of view of Azure networking over your virtual network. And now you've got 64,000-ish outbound ports to make it to that endpoint, and you're not going through the general Azure NAT layer, and you can completely bypass all of this. Which, as an aside, people ask us, what's up with all the virtual network connectivity we keep on adding to public multi-tenant app service? There are a million reasons we do it. That's actually one of them, because it is literally the definitive way to just permanently mitigate and solve that problem.
Okay, I think now we're really nearing the end of the session. So I did want to ask in the room. I think we are pretty much done with the questions on the chat, so that's great. There's been some great feedback on some of the things that folks have been really liking. I think I saw one about one-click Azure Azure Active Directory authentication middleware. There's some excitement around Drupal support. So Tulika, lots of follow-up for you, and Laravel support. So I think these are great things for folks to follow up with us. You can find us in the catalog. So if you want to reach out to Tulika, and I hope that's okay, so they can find you through the catalog and continue the conversation. I did want to leave you with a quick slide on where you can learn more about some of the things. If you're new to Azure App Service, I don't know actually, is anybody here new to Azure App Service? No, it doesn't seem so, right? Everybody knows and is. Yeah, so hopefully on the internet that helps some of the folks, because we are seeing a lot of new folks embracing this, especially with the migration to cloud being such a top priority for customers. So with that, thank you again for spending your time with us. I don't want to stand between you and lunch, at least for the folks here in Seattle, and I hope you guys have a great time wherever you are in the world. There's a lot of other sessions we have on app service, on container apps, on Kubernetes, the whole stuff, Spring apps. I think that's going to happen very soon. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. I've posted a link to the blog, which kind of lists all of them, so it's easy to find. So keep coming back, talking to us, and thank you for all your questions and feedback. And thank you, panel, for all your amazing answers and engagement. There is an evaluation that's super important for us, so please do not forget to fill out that evaluation. That's what helps us understand if this is working, what should we change. We are living in a new world, so there's a lot of change, and I appreciate everyone being flexible with that. We will figure it out. So give us your feedback so we can keep making this better. With that, thank you.